Thank you, Nicole, for those nice introductions. This is Christina. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking time this evening to learn about healthy beverages and childcare with a focus on water. For our session tonight, we will briefly identify the benefits of water. Holly will review CACFP standards around water. And then I will discuss water safety in ECE settings, and Holly will tell you about resources. We'll end with Laura, who will share ideas and resources for water promotion. So why water? Why do we care about this? Good drinking water habits can improve oral health, improve cognition and mood, and assist healthy elimination habits. Drinking water instead of sugar-sweetened beverage also improves oral health. It helps to maintain a healthy weight, and it reduces the risk of diabetes type 2 and fatty liver disease. Research supports the importance of reducing sugar in the diet. After studying all the science, a committee of the American Heart Association recommends that children consume less than 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day, and that children under 2 eat no added sugar. And you probably know that sugar-sweetened beverages are the major contributor to added sugar in our diet. So this is why we place this focus on drinking water instead of sugar-sweetened beverages. And now I'm going to hand it over to Holly.
Good evening, everyone. I would like just to take a real quick minute for those that might not be familiar, just to explain the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP. It is a federal nutrition program that provides funds to child care and adult care facilities to serve nutritious meals and snacks in early care and education settings. USDA administers CACFP through grants to states, usually under the Department of Education, Agriculture, or Health. So the slide that you're seeing now, back in 2013, USDA conducted formative research among CACFP audiences in the areas of nutrition, physical activity, and electronic media use. The purpose of this research was to learn current practices of CACFP operators, as well as needs for future training and technical assistance. Results of the research showed that milk and water are the most frequently served beverages in child care settings, with almost no sugar-sweetened beverages being served, and nearly half of providers are serving water at all or most meals and snacks. So overall, CACFP providers are already making strides in serving healthy beverages. As you might know, USDA recently made the first major changes to CACFP meal patterns since the program's inception in 1968. Under the new standards, meals and snacks served will include a greater variety of vegetables and fruit, more whole grains, and less added sugar and saturated fat. The standards encourage breastfeeding and better align the CACFP with other child nutrition programs, such as the School Lunch Program and WIC. The new meal patterns must be implemented no later than October 1st, 2017. States had the option of allowing early implementation, so some CACFP operators are already practicing these new standards. USDA has developed a variety of resources to support implementation of the new meal patterns, like the poster shown on the slide. And these resources are available on our Team Nutrition website. The address is shown there. The materials are available electronically for download to anyone, and CACFP operators can order free printed copies. As Christina mentioned, water can help children stay hydrated and healthy, particularly when chosen as an alternative to sugar-sweetened beverages, which is why requirements around water and healthy beverages were incorporated into the updated nutrition standards. Under the new infant meal pattern, only breast milk and infant formula are served from 0 to 5 months of age, so no solid foods or other types of beverages, and juice is no longer allowed as part of a reimbursable infant meal. Under the child meal pattern, juice is limited to 1 serving per day, and children 5 and younger cannot have flavored milk. If flavored milk is served to children 6 years and older, a standard best practice includes an optional best practice of selecting flavored milk that contains no more than 22 grams of sugar per 8 fluid ounces. Additional information on the meal patterns can be found on the USDA website at fns.usda.gov/CACFP. Shown here is CACFP Policy Memo 20-2016, which provides background and guidance around potable water requirements. The Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010 required that CACFP providers make potable water available to children. This requirement went into effect back in 2011. In April of 2016, the final meal pattern rule codified the water requirement that childcare centers and daycare homes make potable water available to children upon request. The final meal pattern rule expanded the water requirement to mandate that starting October 1st, 2017, providers must also offer potable water to children throughout the day. This was added in recognition that the majority of the CACFP participants are very young children and may not be able to or know how to ask for it themselves. This next slide is a visual summary of the water guidance outlined in the aforementioned memo. Child care centers and family child care providers can make water available to children in a variety of ways, such as setting out cups next to kitchen faucets, having water pitchers and cups set out throughout a room or environment, or simply providing water should it be requested. Offering water means asking children if they would like water at different times throughout the day. For very young children, this may require visual cues, such as showing the cup or pitcher while verbally offering water. I've talked a lot about what is required, so I just wanted to take a moment to mention what is not required. CACFP operators are not required to make water available for children to self-serve, and they are not required to serve water alongside meals or snacks. This can be a little confusing, so I'll rephrase. Water must be available during meals should a child request it, but it doesn't have to be offered or served with meals. Sometimes there can be confusion around milk and water in CACFP. Both are quality beverages that are important to growth and development of young children. The difference between the two is that in the CACFP, milk is part of the reimbursable meal, as shown in the chart here, and water is not. Therefore, water may not be served instead of milk in a reimbursable meal. As I mentioned before, water can be served and consumed alongside milk in a reimbursable meal. If water is offered during a meal alongside milk, operators should consider offering smaller amounts of water and keep in mind that children who drink too much liquid may feel too full to eat. USDA recommends serving water with snacks when no other beverage is being served or in place of other sweetened beverages that are not creditable in CACFP. This is a picture of family-style meal service. As you can see, water can be served and placed on the table at the same time if the provider chooses. As you are probably familiar, infused water is water flavored with fruit, vegetables, or herbs. Centers or daycare homes may serve infused water as long as there is also plain water available. The infused water must be flavored on site, and local food safety guidelines should be followed. Purchased commercially prepared flavored water such as Propel, vitamin water, LaCroix sparkling water is not allowed. The fruits and vegetables used to flavor the water cannot count towards the fruit or vegetable components of a CACFP reimbursable meal. And this is just because the amount of the fruit or vegetable that would be used to flavor or garnish the water is too small. Because infused water is more flavorful, it may increase palatability and increase water consumption among children. Providers might wish to incorporate infused water into nutrition education or gardening activities as well. We've received feedback. There is some confusion around water requirements in the CACFP, and in turn, hesitancy around promoting water and fear of being found non-compliant during monitoring reviews. And that's really the purpose of tonight's webinar, is to help clarify requirements and provide practical examples of what providing potable water looks like in various CACFP settings. Currently, CACFP operators are monitored to ensure water is made readily available to children upon request. Monitoring requirements must be updated to reflect the new standards that water also be offered throughout the day effective October 1st, 2017. The resources listed here include basic guidance around water for centers, family child care, and at-risk programs. These resources can be found on our FNS website that I mentioned before. And these handbooks are really a practical resource because they break down CACFP policy into more easily understandable language. Christina?
Thank you, Holly. Now let's look at a few examples of making water available throughout the day. These two examples could meet what we might think of as the letter of the law, since water is technically available and CACFP does not require self-serve. But do you think they make it easy for children to get a drink? If we operate with the spirit of the law, we make water more easily available all day. We want children to make a habit of drinking water. With these individual bottles, water is very easily available for self-serve throughout the day. The bottles in the dishpan are all ready to go outside at playtime. If you operate the CACFP, you also need to offer water, as Holly explained, and we'll talk more about that later. I want to mention, or as Nicole already mentioned, that we are part of the National Drinking Water Alliance, and we have a website that's full of resources. Each type of resource, research, policy information, toolkits and guides on safety and building access, and resources for drinking water education and promotion are sorted by setting, so you can easily find the resources for early care and education. Let's take a few minutes to talk about tap water safety. Most tap water is safe. In fact, tap water undergoes more stringent testing than bottled water, plus it has fluoride, which is so important for growing teeth. However, we hear in the news about unsafe water. We've been mapping this media coverage of tap water contamination incidents to get a sense of where the problem is. On the map, the dots represent the stories we've found in the past 2 years. Purple dots are lead in school tap water, and blue dots are other types of contamination found in schools' tap water. And the green dots are lead in community tap water, and red dots are other contaminants found in community tap water. The map and news stories can be found on the National Drinking Water Alliance website. So we do want to have an awareness of safety. What can you do to make sure your water is safe? First of all, find out where your water is from. If you get your water from the local utility, they provide information about water quality in something called the Consumer Confidence Report. You can also contact the utility to ask about testing at the tap if you are concerned about lead. This might be because you are in an older building, in a big city, or your community has a history of problems. If you plan to test your water, also plan ahead on how you will tell parents, staff, and the broader community, and what you will do to fix problems. I want you to know that some states now have programs for tap water testing in schools and in childcare. The second step, as I mentioned, is to tell the results. Parents want to know that you know that the water you are serving is safe. If it's not, you need to let them know what you're going to do about it, and that until you have the problem fixed, you will serve bottled water. But probably you will be telling them that you've checked and the water is safe. This way, you let them know that you are serious about the well-being of the kids you care for. Third, if you have a problem with water quality, you can filter your cooking and drinking water. Ensure that you are using filtration that is certified to NSF/ANSI standards for the contaminant in question. The label on the filter package will tell you this. For lead in tap water, use filters certified to standard 53 and change them when needed. There's detailed information about all of this on the drinking water website. Here's what our website listings look like. You can click through to the resource. But again, most tap water is safe, so announce it. Now, back to Holly.
Thank you, Christina. I'm back to policy. CACFP Policy Memo 18-2016 speaks to CACFP operators' responsibility to ensure the availability of potable water. Most operators obtain drinking water through public water systems, which are regulated by the EPA, which recommends childcare facilities routinely test drinking water. The memo also outlines guidance around allowable costs related to drinking water. I want to note that family daycare home facilities or providers are exempt from CACFP's nonprofit food service requirement. This means that the allowable cost information we're about to talk about does not apply to family child care providers. However, the information does apply to institutions such as independent child care centers or sponsoring organizations of child care centers and family daycare homes. For the majority of operators, USDA expects the potable water requirement to result in minimal or no cost. There are some instances when costs related to drinking water would be considered allowable use of CACFP nonprofit food service account funds. Costs related to potable water for consumption by CACFP participants or for water testing services would be considered an allowable use if the costs are determined to be reasonable, necessary, and applicable to the CACFP. Determining allowable costs can be a bit complex, and many costs must be analyzed on a case-to-case basis. So CACFP operators should always consult with and get approval from their state agency before initiating any expenditure. Just very briefly, a reasonable cost is one that a practical person would opt to incur in like circumstances. So what that really means is that no one would question the cost of temporarily serving bottled water at a child care center that does not have access to safe drinking water. However, it would be deemed unreasonable to serve really expensive brand name bottled water. A cost is considered necessary if it is needed for operation of the CACFP and to meet regulatory requirements of the program, which, as we know, water is required. And a cost must be applicable, meaning that it benefits both CACFP program and other activities. It can be distributed to each program in a reasonable proportion to the benefit received. So that sounds a little bit complex, but for example, if an at-risk child and adult care food program site located in a church wanted to purchase an under-the-sink filtration unit for the kitchen that it uses for both CACFP and church activities, benefiting both the CACFP program and the church, it could be considered allowable cost if the cost can be distributed to each in reasonable proportion to the benefits received. So here are just a couple quick examples of some common questions we get around allowable costs and water. The question or the scenario is a child care center purchased bottled drinking water for CACFP children because the facility's drinking water tested unsafe. Is this an allowable cost of CACFP food service account funds? And the question is yes. And the reason why is because the child care facility does not have access to potable water. The next scenario is a child care center is repairing plumbing to its building. The answer here is no. Costs associated with repair to a facility's building plumbing would add to the permanent value of the child care facility. Therefore, costs would be borne by the facility's general fund rather than CACFP food service account funds. And this is our last scenario. A child care facility purchased a reserve osmosis filter system for its kitchen. The answer here is maybe. The cost to purchase equipment to filter water would meet the reasonable and necessary test if the program participants are the primary, if not exclusive, beneficiaries. So it depends on cost, the need for equipment, and a lot of other nuances that need to be taken into consideration. So again, for this particular situation, CACFP institutions should always consult with and get approval from their state agency. Okay, back to Christina.
Actually, it's Laura, but thanks, Holly.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
No problem. So now let's shift back to talking about providing water. So if you're already making water available throughout the day, what are some easy and practical ways to do this? Christina already showed you a couple of great ideas, and here's one more. This is a picture from child care that we visited, and at that child care, they put each child's photos on a bottle, and little ones then know exactly where they can get water. And bottle hygiene is simple. Just let bottles air dry daily overnight and wash them with hot soapy water at least once a week. Another great idea is to think about introducing water breaks. Incorporating regular water breaks into daily schedules can encourage children and staff to fill up water bottles or visit the fountain to drink water, and this is also a great time to offer water. And Holly talked a little bit about this previously, but little kids don't always recognize their thirst, and the little ones certainly can't ask for water. And that's one of the reasons why CACFP is introducing a new requirement to offer water. And offering water means asking children when they would like water at different times throughout the day. And for very young children, this may require visual cues, such as showing the cup or pitcher while verbally offering water. And good times to offer water more frequently might be during or after physical activity, on hot summer days, or during the cold winter months when the air is drier because of indoor heating. Studies also show that drinking water education and promotion make a big difference, and they can help increase water consumption. And there's a growing collection of early care and education-specific resources. So many of you may be familiar with Potter the Otter, shown here sipping his favorite drink. And there are Potter the Otter posters, books, and activity sheets, and those are all available for free, and they can be downloaded from our website. Another great resource is Andy Z's Drink More Water video. Perhaps some of you have learned the song and the motions. This is a great thing to share with little ones. And the original song and accompanying music video encourages children to drink more water. Other ideas include learning activities and classroom decorations. And don't forget the importance of staff modeling. Modeling healthy habits is very important. Let children see you drinking water. And just to highlight a couple of other great resources, on the left you can see Water First, which is a resource from the University of California, San Francisco, that contains a lot of great tips for the ECE setting. And last summer, we designed a Take Action challenge on water in childcare settings, and it turned out that the most popular challenge was providers pledging to drink water, not sugary beverages. And that's a great way to promote water. As I just said, staff modeling is very important. And these resources and many more can be found on the National Drinking Water Alliance's website. Here's what the early care education and promotion page looks like on our website. And before we make time for questions, I want to just take a moment for some advocacy. So we all know that many people don't read the dietary guidelines for Americans, especially preschoolers. And that's why at the National Drinking Water Alliance, we're advocating for a symbol for water on the My Plate graphic, the consumer-facing expression of the guidelines and nutrition teaching tool. And on our website, you can find out more about our campaign and download a template for a sticky note with a water droplet. You can see that template on the right. And when you teach nutrition, you can use the sticky to place your own symbol for water on the My Plate graphic. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nicole.
Okay, thank you guys. That was a lot of great information. Like we mentioned, we can go ahead and now open it up for questions for Holly, Christina, and Laura. And you can submit them through your control panel where it should say questions, and we'll go ahead and give it a few seconds and wait for any of those that might come in. Okay, so we've got a few coming in now, so I'll go ahead and start reading them off. Elizabeth Roberts is asking, as long as the water has been tested and okay, is it all right to let them drink out of the hose, as shown in the picture?
You think maybe we shouldn't have that hose picture there? I think as long as you know that your facility plumbing doesn't contain lead and the water is fine, that drinking water out of a hose is okay for a summer activity.
Okay, and then Lorna is asking, what about babies? Do we need to give infants water as well?
The new guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics and an expert panel convened by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation recommend that children start or have water introduced to them when they start having complementary foods. So what that means is that in the very early months, usually the first 5 to 6 months, children are exclusively being fed breast milk or formula, and they shouldn't have anything else. But sometime around 6 months, children are becoming interested in eating other foods and participating in mealtime. So when it comes to beverages, that's an appropriate time to introduce water to them. You know, back in the day when I was a mom, at that age, we would start our kids with some kind of juice, usually apple juice. But what we understand now is let's just forget about the juice when they're little. And after when they're ready to start having something other than milk, let's just go to water. And furthermore, these experts recommend that instead of putting water in a bottle, you can even use a sippy cup and let them start learning to manipulate a cup. So I hope that answers your question, Lorna.
And if it doesn't, Lorna, you can always feel free to do a post question and submit it as well. Okay, moving on. Carla is asking, is there a specific amount of it to be consumed daily? I'm not sure. There's a typo in there, but does that make sense to you guys? Is there a specific amount of it to be consumed daily?
I think that probably Carla's wondering about a specific amount of water to drink daily. And, you know, we see so much conversation about this. Should we drink 8 cups a day, etc.? And actually with water, there is no hard and fast rule. It's going to depend so much on how much other beverages a person is drinking. Some foods contain a lot of liquid. For example, watermelon has a lot of water in it, and other vegetables. And the weather makes a difference too. So we really can't define some specific amount of water that people should drink. I know that's a little frustrating. Typically, letting thirst be the guideline is best, but of course, for small children, they don't necessarily recognize thirst, or they can't ask for water. And this is why the CACFP meal patterns are trying to address this by suggesting, or actually requiring, that providers offer water to children and hold up the glass or show them a pitcher of water or something, so that it sort of reminds them that they might be thirsty.
Okay, great. Kathy is asking, when children bring their own lunches, how do we discourage parents from sending juice drinks?
That is a really good question, and I think the best way to do it is by providing parent education. That pledge that Laura was mentioning, not only was that popular with providers, but when we had that little contest, some of them were sending the pledge home to parents and letting them take the pledge for themselves, or perhaps they could do it for those juice packages in the lunchbox. But in any case, I think that we need to help parents learn to understand that sugary beverage is actually contributing calories and sugar that our children just don't need, and that water is the healthy alternative.
Awesome.
Laura, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I'll just put another plug in for the Potter the Otter resources. Those books are wonderful to send home. I think that can be one way to sort of help convey that message.
Okay, Tara is asking if you can explain the filtered water that you mentioned previously.
So in some parts of the country, tap water might not taste very good. And then there are times and places when tap water actually has some unhealthy ingredients in it. By that I mean it's absorbed some lead from passing through lead pipes. Or you may live in an area where perhaps you're on well water, or your local water utility doesn't provide safe water. Now, I want to reiterate that all of those are unlikely conditions. It's, you know, by far the vast majority of tap water is perfectly fine. But if there's a problem with contamination, or even if the flavor of the water isn't so good, you can filter the water, and that means that the water goes through a filter which removes, let's say, the chlorine that gives it a bad flavor, or it can remove the little microscopic particles of lead that can leach into water when it passes through lead plumbing. That's why I said that when you purchase filtering equipment, you need to make sure that it filters for your particular concern. You've probably seen pitchers at the grocery store with filters that just help filter out things that give water a kind of a bad flavor. And those are fine to use if water flavor is the issue. But you can also look, as I mentioned, for the filters certified to standard 53, which means that they filter out lead. Now, I hope that I've made that clear. It's a little bit of a complicated topic, so if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Yeah, that's a good thing to add, is that if any of these questions aren't being answered to your liking, those emails, you can, Holly and Christina and Laura have all okayed you emailing them, I believe, to answer any follow-up questions you may have.
Yes, definitely.
Good. Okay. Moving on, Gloria is asking if the water needs to be a specific temperature.
I think water doesn't need to be any temperature other than what makes it appealing to drink. So a lot of people like their water a bit cool. Personally, I prefer my water at room temperature.
Okay, Elizabeth is asking, this is a good one. This is actually something that I'd be curious to know too. Can children get too much water and become waterlogged?
Yeah, probably that little boy drinking out of the hose. It is true that there can be rare cases where people drink too much water and get ill from it. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a pediatrician, but I think it would be really unusual for a child to drink too much water.
That's good to know. Okay. Kimberly is asking, is there a set number of times that water has to be offered throughout the day?
Holly, got a suggestion on that?
Hi, everyone. USDA does not have a specific prescription of the number of times that water should be offered throughout the day or the location, whether it's inside or outside. The requirements are a bit vague, and the reason for that is because they really would like providers to be in tune to children's individual needs, and hopefully by making water available and making a conscious effort to talk about water and offer water and be a role model in drinking water, that the children will be able to self-identify when they're truly thirsty and when they need to hydrate.
Okay, great. Thank you, Holly. Okay, Maria's asking, is it okay to just have sippy cups filled with water when we do outside play, or do we need to have a container with water and have them serve themselves?
Holly?
Sippy cups is fine. Again, there are suggestions of ways to help make water available, but essentially the method in which you choose to make water available is up to the provider. Of course, keeping in mind good food safety practices, any local licensing requirements. Sometimes there's other things to keep into consideration, but in terms of USDA requirements, it's really up to you how you'd like to do that.
Yes, I'd like to add that a couple of states require that when you're using cups in licensed childcare, they need to be disposable cups because they're trying to avoid the issue of children sharing drinking cups. That's one reason why we liked those water bottles with a child's picture on it, or the bottles where every child had a very distinctive water bottle, so that there would be a whole lot less fear of sharing around the same drinking container.
Okay, and then some of the last few questions, we'll go ahead and kind of wrap it up. A few people are asking, saying they're not in the food program, and the sites and the materials and the handbooks you've mentioned, if they're able to get these, or if you could provide the link for these materials again.
Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead, Holly.
I was just going to say, yes, absolutely. The links are available to anyone, regardless of if you're in the CACFP or not. And the links are provided within the slides, which I believe everyone has access to.
Yes, we will go ahead and make sure everyone gets those slides sent out tomorrow with the recording.
I just want to chime in and say that I'm really impressed with all the number of questions and the variety of issues people are bringing up, especially as out here in California, it's only dinner time, but for many of you, it's later in the evening. So before we quit, I do want to say thanks to everyone for having a great conversation. And I don't mean to turn off the questions quite yet, but if something comes up, by all means, please email us.
Yes, definitely. I'll echo that. There's been a lot of great questions, and if there's something that wasn't quite answered, or you think of something later, you can go ahead and email me, as well as Holly, Christina, and Laura when those resources go out tomorrow. So it looks like we're pretty much done with questions. So we'll kind of shut things down here. And thank you again, Holly and Christina and Laura. I know I learned a lot as well, so I'm sure our providers and everyone else joining in tonight learned a lot as well. So thank you again.
Thanks, everybody, and good evening.
Yes, have a good night.
Yes, thank you.